Welcome to the Valley Today, a public service presentation of the good folks at KAIL TV. Central California is rich in history, and part of that history was made in Coarsegold in eastern Madera County. Our visit to the Coarsegold Historic Museum on Highway 41 shows us artifacts and life dating back to 1840. Join us as we talk with Steve Coar, docent to the Coarsegold Historic Museum, up next on the Valley Today. And welcome to the Valley Today. With us is Steve Coar from the Coarsegold Historical Society or Museum?
Well, both.
Or both, okay. Well, I caught that one right. And what a beautiful day. We are lucky.
Gorgeous day. The smoke's gone. Nice and warm, breezy.
Yeah. Now, this place here that we're at was originally a stage stop.
That's correct.
Yeah.
In fact, this building over here in the distance is what we call the Old Adobe.
Yeah.
It was a stage stop that's dated to the 1890s, 1880s. May have been here as early as the 1840s.
And let's walk, Steve. Let's go look at the Old Adobe. And tell us a little bit, when was this started?
The museum was started in 1991,
Yeah.
actually. This building, of course, has been here for well over 100 years.
And this is representative of the type of equipment that would come through here, huh?
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Now, is this original or is this a reproduction?
This is not original. The chassis is original. The body has been rebuilt.
Yeah.
Obviously, wood biodegrades pretty easily.
We are so spoiled now. You know, we're driving around in these automobiles and we're relatively riding in a living room on wheels. And you know, these guys using this stuff 150 years ago, this was impressive.
The stage routes that went up to Yosemite. Now this was a freight wagon route here, but the stage routes were not actually stage coaches. They were just open wagons like this because the dust was so horrific.
You put buckboards in them, huh?
That they could not keep people inside there, would just plaster them with dirt. So they were open vehicles as well. So your point's well taken as far as comfort.
And you've kept this building in a state of repair. I mean, you've had to keep up with modern times. So you've mudded this, but you've got this interesting plexiglass feature over here. Come on over here, Charles, and look at this. And Steve, come on over here and tell us what we're looking at here.
What we're looking at here is representative of a packed adobe structure. It's one of only a couple in the state of California. And it's not built like the traditional adobe buildings that we're familiar with the blocks, the adobe blocks. In fact, they took mud and rocks. They would drive two stakes in the ground or beams in the ground a certain distance apart, and they would stack the mud and the rocks inside there. When it would dry up, they would take one of those beams out, move it over, and repeat the process. It would then be covered with a stucco type surface. What you're seeing here is an example of what was the original adobe building in the late 1800s and an addition that was added on later. But you can see it's rather crude and primitive. It's not like what we're used to.
And so with there's no wood or any structure like that, so clearly it must be working well because this thing is what, 150 years old?
Yeah, it's immensely thick.
Yeah.
But yeah, not a lot of rebar.
Wow. Well, that's pretty cool. Let's move on and we'll just keep moving here. We're gonna go inside now and check out this. It was a one room, now a two room, right?
Correct.
Come on in, Charles. How's the color in here?
Looks good.
How's the videos okay?
Yeah.
Tell us about the inside of this building.
Well, this room that we're standing in was the original way station. As I said, maybe as early as the 1840s. This room back here was added on at a later date. But the wagons would have come here, freshen their horses, had something to eat, get some blacksmithing done, get repairs done. This building it's on a historical register, by the way, California State Historic Register, which will allow us to do some remodeling without having to deal with current building codes. Obviously, if we had to deal with current building codes, with this,
handicap accessible bathrooms.
Yeah, and things like
that.
Rebar. But for example, this ceiling was put in at a later time. This actually, in the day, would have been an open trussed ceiling.
Yeah.
The fireplace, we're not sure is original. We think the fireplace is original. The areas on both sides, the hearths are not. They were added sometime at a later date.
Of course, probably as they were getting established, they would add things like a fireplace and, kitchen and things like that. But
if you take a look over, you can see how thick this adobe actually is. Looking at those window frames.
Yeah, it's a good foot or more.
Yeah, we keep it cool in the summer, and relatively cool in the summer.
Yeah.
And warmer in the wintertime.
And this is really representative of how they lived back 150 years ago.
That's correct.
So stage stops, how far between were stage stops? 10 miles, 15
That's
miles,
about
20
right.
miles?
Horses had to be refreshed or changed out about every 8 to 10 miles.
Yeah.
So that's
And
that's
of course,
how far they were spaced.
being on the flatland is one thing, but you start running animals up in the hills, then they probably tire more quickly.
Yeah, the service life on a mule was not very long. The
Yeah.
shelf life.
Well, this is quite fascinating. And what year do you think this was built?
Well, we've got it to the 1880s. There's some people that suggest it may have been here as early as the 1840s. After all, gold was discovered here in the late 1840s, so it's not unreasonable that that would be the case.
And so they just had a mass exodus of people coming through this area.
Yeah, supposedly at one time, Coarsegold had a population of 10,000 people.
No kidding.
Yeah, believe it or not. Coarsegold is the only mining town in Madera County that is still remaining. There were several other mining towns, Hildreth, Fine Gold as opposed to Coarsegold.
And just
Narbo, which is my favorite story, but
Yeah.
we'll talk about that later.
which one was that?
A little town called Narbo,
Yeah.
named after Narbonne in France.
Now, is that on the 49?
It's actually behind us here on Quartz Mountain.
Oh, okay.
Behind the casino is
Yeah.
where the town was.
Because, this really is, they found gold south of here, but really all the gold stories, the good gold stories that are in California history are north of here,
North. Gold was found here just about the same time as Sutter's Mill. It was found right here where Highway 49 comes in, Highway 41 comes into Coarsegold in a creek bed, and they found it was a rather coarse nugget. The town was originally called Coarsegold Gulch, 3 words. And at one time was called Texas Flat because the miners that found it were from Texas. But ultimately, the post office decided it was going to be Coarsegold.
And that's when a town gets established, is when they establish a post
That
office.
was the first election was held here in 1852.
Wow.
So we've been around.
1852.
Yeah.
That's when the whites were finally getting into the area. I mean, before that, 10 years earlier, there was not a lot of white people in here.
That's correct.
Mexicans and Spanish, but...
And the indigenous, the Indians. Yeah.
Right, yeah. I wonder what the Indians thought with all these white people rushing into this area. That must have really perplexed them.
They probably thought they should have had tougher immigration laws.
And better weapons to fend themselves off, huh?
Yeah, they should have been pounding
Now,
steel.
this land here is, this is Chichancy land? This is where the Chichancy were?
The Chichancy, the Rancheria is, in this general area. This
Or
particular
actually,
piece-
though, they're Yokut, right? Or Yokut?
Yokut is, yes, they say that. It's a term that's used to describe a lot of the indigenous throughout the valley.
Yeah.
They were the Indians in this area were Chichancy, Miwok, Mono, just over the hill. They were all over the place.
What was interesting is in Reedley, there's Choinumne. In that area up in Squaw Valley, there's Choinumne Indian. But you go a little further south, it's Wochumne, or Woichumne. I might not be pronouncing it correctly, but I think there's all these, and they're all probably interrelated because they would migrate and all that.
And they would meet, and they would have their little disagreements and their wars and their battles, and
right. Very interesting. So, what is this the new part of the building?
This is the original.
This is the original part.
This was added sometime, again, we don't have good records, but we think sometime probably right around 1900.
And they had tile in here.
They did at one point.
Yeah.
Well, as I say, these ceilings were added, drop ceilings. They added the wooden portion on the end here. At one point, the wooden portion, one of the stories has it that it served as a brothel, which would make sense with all the miners and the people in the area.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true or not, but I love the story.
Yeah. And supposedly, the people that were servicing the miners were making more money than the miners themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the success stories.
That was not
Are
unusual
the general
at all.
merchants,
The mercantiles,
and the bars, and the woman coming up here and cooking good meals and making pies. She would make more money.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Most of the miners went home empty-pocketed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many people do you think rushed in here in the late 1840s or early 1850s?
I don't honestly know. As I said, the population of Coarsegold at one point was reported to be 10,000 people. So that's a lot of people. Our population now, including Yosemite Lakes Park, is probably maybe 15,000.
Yeah,
So.
and that's quite a few people.
Yeah.
So this was established when, do you think? As a stage stop?
Well, again, story goes anywhere from late 1840s to into the early 1900s.
And then when did it stop being a stage stop?
Well, they put Highway 41 through in the 1930s. So about that point, obviously, the traffic stopped coming through here.
I noticed a little dirt road coming in right here. Was that part of the stage road?
Yeah, the stage route would have gone right.
I got a good eye.
Yeah,
I didn't even ask you that. Yeah.
I should be interviewing
No. You are filling us in on all the good stuff here. This is really quite fascinating. When do you think this edition was brought in?
Probably somewhere, again, late 1890s.
And of course, after the stage stop, then this became a private residence, right?
Indeed. We've actually had several people visit the museum who said they lived here.
Really?
At one point, or they knew somebody that lived here. Yeah.
Wow. How cool is that?
I think that's very cool.
And there's well, it looks like they did have power in here because there's an electrical cord right there. But
and we actually have to depend on them for some of the information we have. Because nothing was written down.
And so you probably have ranchers and cattlemen that come in, and they've been here for generations, and they can probably fill you in on a lot of stories too, right?
Well, one of the things the historical societies did early on was develop a book or put together a book called As We Were Told. And they spent literally thousands and thousands of hours interviewing the old timers.
That's great.
Many of whom are, of course,
they're gone now, yeah.
And their stories are fascinating. We just happen to sell the book in the museum if you have an interest.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've gotten a lot of our information from those old timers.
And
of course, in those days, the families stayed and stayed and stayed.
Yeah.
And
of course, ranching is still part of this area too.
Ranching is still a big part of it.
I mean, that's about all you can do with this property, huh?
Well, and it's not...
Other than that or get gold.
It's not prime ranch land very much either because of all the shrub and trees, but there's a lot of cattle grazing, yes, and a lot of small ranches.
Here at the Coarsegold Historical Museum and Society, in the main barn now, which was erected in 1950, and you've got three main features of this part of the museum.
That's correct. As I said, the barn was built from lumber from a warehouse that was torn down in Madeira in 1950. So we're using recycled goods here. The barn is divided into three essential areas. One is that we refer to as the Indian Room, which honors the indigenous peoples, the Chukchansi tribe that was here. The middle room, which we'll go into in a moment, is set up to show the history of Coarsegold, the town itself, as well as to recognize the mining and the gold industries that were prevalent at the time. Finally, the third room is just a collection of things that you might have found in a home around the turn of the 20th century.
This is really well laid out. And there's nothing like an old barn, I got to tell you.
That's true. Well,
I feel at home in an old barn.
Well, we're pleased just to be lucky enough to have a structure. We wish it was a little more weather tight. But
now the society and the museum was started in '91.
Society was started in '81.
'81.
We were lucky enough to acquire this property in '91. And
was this a donation from somebody that owned it?
No, it was a purchase.
Oh, okay.
We garnered funds from the sale of some of our books here, as we were told. I think we talked about earlier. And the volunteers just worked their butts off. But this thing was a real mess. There's some photos on the wall here of how bad what a wreck it was when it was purchased.
Yeah.
And we depend solely on volunteers and for donations. We're not funded in any way by grants or any government entity.
Do you keep the lights on through donations?
We keep the lights on through donations.
And you're looking for are you looking for volunteers and donations?
Always.
Okay. What's the number that people can call?
They can call 642. That's area code 559 642 4448.
Okay, 4448. And is there a website or?
There is a website, CoarsegoldHistoricalSociety.com.
Yeah.
We're pretty needy. We have one major fundraiser every year, which is Music in the Meadow, where the meadow area out here, we bring bluegrass bands in.
Oh, nice.
We serve them.
What time of year do you do that, in the fall?
We do that the first Saturday in June every year.
Oh, okay, so in the middle of summer.
Yeah, it's our primary fundraiser, and it gets enough to pretty much keep the lights on. But obviously maintenance and everything else, we depend on membership.
Seemed like you would have more traffic here, being right next to Highway 41 and so close to the Chukchansi casino.
Well, I think most people are headed to the casino, and they like, oh, there it went.
Yeah. And I've done that too, because I've had to go to Oakhurst a few times, and I've seen this for years, and I go, I've got to stop by there, and I've got to see these folks, and And now we're finally here, but you know, it's been a couple of years in the making.
Well, we're fortunate enough to have enough volunteers to docent that we're able to keep our gates open, our doors open a little more frequently. I know I lived here for years and I'd drive by before I ever found a time, oh, the gates are open, I can go in.
Yeah. So what are your hours?
We're here Thursday, Friday, and Saturday from 10 to 2, and on Sunday from 12 to 4.
So basically you're just 4 hours a day and 4 days a week.
And if we could get more docents and more memberships,
then
we
could be open longer. Yeah. I understand.
So
well,
that's the pitch.
Yeah, that's well, let's move on to the next room.
This is a room I mentioned. It's devoted to the history of Coarsegold, some of the mining history, some of the ranching history. Interesting story here about the Buffalo Soldiers who worked in Yosemite National Park.
That's right.
You may have heard of them.
Yeah.
They were a black regiment, and they were called Buffalo Soldiers because the Indians thought their curly hair looked like the hair of a buffalo.
Interesting. So the Indians gave them that name.
They gave them that name. Yeah.
Wow.
I happen to like stuff personally.
Yeah.
I like the old photos, but I like the old book press, the cream separator, the grape press, the butter churn, the mechanical things.
Yeah. Yeah, this is quite fascinating. And this is all from the local area?
All from the local area.
Yeah.
We hope to have it be from the local area, and if not exactly from the local area, at least from the proper era. You know, maybe something from another portion in the Sierras.
And most of these were probably donations from people that had passed on and left it to their children. And
I'm only aware of one item that's been purchased, and I say one item. There's 3 old vacuum cleaners in the next room that we actually purchased. We came across them and I felt we had to have them.
Yeah.
But everything else has been the kindness of strangers.
Yeah,
you know?
and that's what really works for a museum, huh?
Yeah.
And you've got a really nice collection. You even have kind of a pseudo-general store here.
That's exactly what it was intended to be. The Coarsegold Market in downtown Coarsegold is actually the oldest continuing running operation in the county of Madera. So we built this just to kind of stock shelves with the kind of things you may have seen in the general store, again, around 1900 or so.
Yeah.
So.
And so Coarsegold had swelled to 15,000 people?
At one time during the gold rush, there were about 10,000 people.
I can't imagine that many people being in the area.
Nor can I.
You know, and that was probably all concentrated within a couple of mile vicinity, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. The mine.
Because they were all working the gulch.
They were working. A lot of them were working the Texas Flat Mine. There were 64 mines registered in Madera County.
The interesting thing that I've heard from people that I've talked to about gold mining in California is that they've really only discovered maybe 5% or less of the gold. They found the low-hanging fruit, but there's still a vast amount of gold here to be discovered. But I guess you'd have to work a little harder for it.
I think you have to work a little harder, but yeah, it's there.
Now you have property here in Coarsegold, and you've found gold on your own property,
yes,
right?
Yes, we have.
Yeah. You must have been excited when you found that little bit of gold.
That was pretty exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not enough to do much with.
So you weren't going to quit. You weren't going to quit your day job, right?
No. And actually, the neighboring property has actually abandoned gold mines on it.
Oh,
so
no
it's pretty
kidding.
Interesting.
Is that where they have actually tunneled into a side of a hill?
Well, into the ground and then down and then horizontal.
Yeah, you know, with gold got up as high as $1,800. I think it's hovering around $1,400 now.
That's right.
On the open market, but still, that's, you know, from the early 70s when we went off the gold standard, and I think it was $25 an ounce.
I was going to say 35 an ounce. Yeah, I think so.
And I remember a kid in high school, and he was a freshman when I was a senior. He says, "We're going off." I didn't know what he was talking about. He says, "The United States is going off the gold standard, and you need to buy gold." I didn't know what he was talking about. Now I understand what he was talking about. 40 years later, you know, the light's going off.
Well, I think you'd have been better off in just the stock market the last couple of years, even so, as we stand today.
Right. You've got this old buggy here, and this was from a local ranching family?
This actually came, I believe, if memory serves me right, I don't want to say it wrong, I think out of Stockton. But it was a donation. This is a doctor's buggy, and this is when the doctor made house calls. He would have come to your house in this doctor's buggy.
Wow.
And this dates 1905. This was the mode of transportation.
This is really something else, you know?
Yeah.
Very nicely restored, or perhaps maybe it's even in original condition.
No, it has been restored, but you know, people were smaller in those days. I mean, can you imagine riding around in this thing?
Yeah.
Across these bumpy roads?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the roads couldn't have been very
And with these
much
little
improvement to
spokes,
'em.
I'm just amazed at how clever our forefathers were in construction and engineering.
Yeah, this is something else. And so you've got a museum also in here. You've got things of the era that might have been in the everyday household. Old radio. Wow, look at that. That's
that interesting?
That's pretty nice.
That's actually a farm radio.
That's a tombstone radio.
That is a tombstone radio, and that's from the 1930s. That's actually a battery-operated radio.
Really?
You know, back in those days, a lot of the rural areas did not have electrification. So they would actually put a battery in so they could listen to the radio.
Wow.
And electrification didn't come till, you know, the FDR administration.
So when do you think Coarsegold got electrified?
You know, I was afraid you were going to ask me that question, and I have not a clue. But probably relatively early.
Well,
on
they
in the
might
game.
have had a couple of the bigger companies that were in here. They might have been making their own power.
Well, and with the mines and everything, it was probably early to the party compared to a lot of other outlying areas.
Yeah. So it was FDR that got rural electrification going?
During his administration, yeah, yeah. There's actually people up here in these foothills now that still are off the grid and have no power.
And you know what? They're probably happy about it too.
Yeah.
Because I know some people that have, you know, been heavily, you know, involved in the new technology, and they would just want to get away from it now.
Yeah.
You know.
But the radio's fun. These are the vacuum cleaners I referred to. Can you even imagine?
And even how does it work? Is it a bellows? Oh my God!
Dragging that thing along. You see, it actually does work.
No power required. You know.
Yeah.
So this is from what, turn of the century?
We have an assortment. The Taylor Tot stroller up there is like from the 1940s, but that's probably that and the C. Dick Run books, probably the earliest thing or the newest thing in the room.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. And you even have a loom here. Look at that. Now that was time involved. You know, even just making your own, spinning your own stuff, of course.
Well, getting to that, there was a lot of work before you even got to that.
This was probably the entertainment portion of their lives, because this was easier work than going out and, you know, milking or, you know, taking care of the animals or, you know. Because 100 years ago, everybody was constantly working. They had to constantly work just to feed themselves.
That's right.
You know, whereas today, you know, we have a different lifestyle.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I'm sure this was a family affair, and at least the female portion of the
women.
family, the women probably were in doing this.
Yeah, making their own clothes, making their own blankets. This is just the schoolhouse. Wow. The schoolhouse. Yeah, let's go see the schoolhouse real quick.
This was built in 1913.
Yeah.
It was built. The Chukchansi kids weren't treated real red hot, and so they decided it would be nice to have a school of their own. In fact, there was many white kids went to the school as Chukchansi. And it was originally outfitted with a kitchen because, you know, they didn't pack brown bag lunches in those days. So the children would come cook their own tortillas. There was a stove in here and an ice box.
So this was just for the Chukchansi children?
Initially, yeah. And it was located right up here on Quartz Mountain, up by the casino, and moved down here in 1994.
Nice.
But it's one of the original one-room schoolhouses in the area.
And it's the survivor. Well, Steve Coar, we're out of time on the Valley today.